So good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I am Brett McSweeney, president of Eleanor's Legacy and the Eleanor's Legacy Action Fund. I would like to wish Ramadan Mubarak to our Muslim friends and to all of us. I note that today is Earth Day. And interesting for all of us who know the power of a union, it was Walter Reuther and the UAW who provided much of the funding and logistics to establish the first Earth Day in 1970. We're here today for a Leaders Roundtable. We'll be joined by women who are experts in their field, and we'll be talking about what it takes and what it means to have an equitable recovery that puts women and girls first and that truly changes how we value women and work and the work that women do. Thank you to Ostroff Associates and to Camille Joseph Goldman of Spectrum for sponsoring the roundtable. I want to highlight that if you need language assistance, we are joined by ASL interpreters Libby Gatlin and Gloria Vargas, and transcription by Tiffany Hames from SignNexus, a woman-owned business. To access the closed caption, click on the CC button on your screen. Also, you'll notice that our digital director, Kaylee Scott, will be using the chat function to drop information in about our speakers. Please take note of that. Also, if there's time at the end, we will take questions. Please be sure to use the Q&A function for all of your questions. I'll say that one more time. Please be sure to use the Q&A function for all of your questions if we've got time. And now let's begin. I would like to acknowledge that the Eleanor's Legacy Action Fund is situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Lenape people. And you are joining us from many places near and far, and we acknowledge the traditional caretakers of those lands as well. And I acknowledge the 51,288 New Yorkers, our neighbors, who we have lost to the pandemic so far. If you've lost a loved one, a friend, or a family member, our condolences to you. And of course, we acknowledge George Floyd and Ma'Khia Bryant and all the men and women and all the boys and girls who have been lost to police violence. And we praise the courage of Darnella Frazier and everyone who has borne witness to the brutal injustice so that the rest of us cannot look away, for those of us who had. For me, for us, one way forward is to elect the leaders who really represent us. To elect women, and specifically Black women, and to have women at every level of leadership and decision-making. The number of women serving in our state legislature is at an all-time high. And I think we're seeing the results and the benefits of that in the budget and the legislative agenda that's being passed in Albany as we speak. So let's keep going. Now, speaking of elected leaders, please join me in welcoming the moderator of our discussion today, Dr. Dorcia Pliers, Chief Auditor for the City of Albany and a member of the Eleanor's Legacy Board of Directors, currently on leave as she runs for re-election. Dorcia, good afternoon, and thank you.
Good afternoon, Brett, and thank you so very much. I think I was still jamming to Beyonce and was interrupted, but we have a great program for you all today and truly appreciate your time. So with that, an official good afternoon and welcome. I am truly honored to moderate today's discussion, and I too would be remiss if I did not take this moment to lift up Mr. George Floyd, his family, and the moment we all are living through because of his murder. As Brett mentioned, our conversation today will focus on what it takes to put women, gender equity, and valuing women's work at the center of our public policy as we move forward together. As the numbers show, we are in a she-cession. Job and income loss are affecting women to a much greater degree than men. No surprises there. To address this crisis, we have to focus on creating the conditions for women to return to work and then valuing the work that we all do. That includes, but is not limited to, equal pay, a conversation that we have been having for a very, very, very long time. To get our conversation started, we are joined by our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul. As chair of the Child Care Availability Task Force and chair of the Regional Economic Development Councils, Our Lieutenant Governor has worked for years to advance women in the workplace by solving the crisis of child care in our state of New York. Please join me in welcoming our Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I hope you can hear me from my mobile office. I travel around the state, and thus far I've covered from Western New York to New York City area all the way up to Washington County, where I am right now in a snowstorm. So wherever you're signing in from, welcome. And first of all, to Brett McSweeney and Eleanor's Legacy, you just surpass all expectations every single year. You have really worked hard and dedicated yourselves to ensuring that we have more representation from women and women of color in all the corridors of power. And you only need to look at the numbers, particularly 2018, 2020, to see how successful you've been. So I'm real excited to lend my support once again, as I have for the last 20 years, to all your candidates. Literally down in Rockland County, talking up a woman of color running for county executive, and hopefully we can get support for her from many levels. And so that's what I'm going to be dedicating myself to. This is our farm team year in a sense. It's not the state races, it is the local races. And so count me in for whatever you want me to do to help the cause of getting more women in elective office. Also, what an extraordinary panel you have here today. You're going to hear from some wonderful people who really walk the walk as well. They don't just encourage people to run and then just walk away themselves. They're engaged. And first of all, starting with our great city auditor in Albany, someone I've gotten to know over many years, Dr. Dorsey at Pleers. You've done a great job, and I want to thank you. I've seen you at many events, and wish you all the best this year. Whatever I can do for you, I'm there. Also, a wonderful friend of mine from Brooklyn, Latrice Walker, our assembly member. She's just another one of those people you just wonder how they keep it all together and are so beloved in their districts. But come to come to Albany, maybe Washington someday. Come to Albany, and are just such a voice for the people. And I love working with her, and I want to thank her for participating in this panel as well. And Angela Elzoe, the executive director of the Capital Region YMCA, wonderful. Dee Dee Hill, policy director from Schuyler County as well. So you're going to hear from people that are in the trenches, that are dealing firsthand with the people's problems. And I would say all of us would agree, all women would agree, that this pandemic has been brutal on women. I wrote a column for Women's History Month that was published by CNN that talks about my fear of losing a generation of accomplishment and steps forward. And I said, I am not letting us lose this generation of women, particularly young women starting out in the workforce, just because of this pandemic. We know women were there on the front lines. We know they showed up more in healthcare. They're the ones who are still working in the grocery stores. They worked in the food services. They got us through this. And now as a result, because their kids were home from school all this time and they never had good, affordable childcare, that now more women are out of the workforce than we've seen in decades. And so this is the specter we're facing. These conversations right now are important to talk about how we make sure that there's more affordable childcare. And you should see me talking to any employer. I am saying, oh, you're putting up a new building? Show me the childcare center you're putting on site. Okay. I'm walking the downtown area and I'm saying, okay, where's our collaborative childcare center? So all these businesses can have their employees work there so they can continue working. We have to be that strategic and push people and shame them into doing it if we have to. And I don't care, because we have waited too long. I had to give up a job I loved in Washington on Capitol Hill for a senator when my babies were born a long time ago. And I thought by the time my kids are ready to have kids, that we would have solved this, and we're not even any closer. So this is personal to me. It's something that I can see continuing to hold women back, but all of us collectively working together to deal with not just childcare, but elder care. How many of you are taking care of older parents? I got an 85-year-old dad who can't figure out why I'm not sitting next to him every day in Florida taking care of him. And I'm doing my best, but I've got to be in New York. So I know the stress that women are under. Many of you are primary breadwinners. Many of you are in jobs that just aren't making it work out. And we have to look out and lift our sisters up. This is our moral responsibility. Every one of us has to help each other, not just get elected office, but also look at what's happening to the people we are so proud to represent. How are they surviving? You talk to any woman on how the recovery is going for her, she's going to say, not great. You ask a woman of color how the recovery is going for her, she's going to say, what recovery are you talking about? I haven't seen it yet, right? Am I right about that? So I'm fired up. I know this is going to be a great conversation, but I want also an action plan. I want takeaways from this that I can help you further the lives of women, as we can just lift some of the burden that's been on them so heavily, particularly for the last year. So congratulations, everybody, for pulling together. Have a great conversation. I'm going to launch a huge solar field up here in Washington County on Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I'm one of the few people, I'm going to guarantee the only person on this call who actually marched during the first Earth Day a long time ago. I won't tell you how many years, but all right, it's 50 years. But I was one of those students who just got involved in everything. And luckily we've seen some progress, but let's continue also to fight for Mother Earth, from the assault from mankind, see the connection there, mankind's assault on Mother's Earth that has gone on far too long. So take care, my friends. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, and happy Earth Day to you as well, Lieutenant Governor. Safe travels. Okay, I was really feeling and receiving our Lieutenant Governor's comments as a mother who is primarily staying at home and also working, and had the opportunity to come into the office today. This has truly been a very challenging time personally. And so I do tip my hat off to all of the women and all of the mothers who make it look so easy, even when it is very challenging and stressful at times. So welcome. I'm going to start our dialogue by setting the table with some context. We are in a she session, as I mentioned. Job and income loss continue to affect women to a greater degree than men. And Hispanic and Black women continue to experience higher unemployment than white and Asian women. And we saw this before, this was pre-COVID. From February 2020 to February 2021, 2.3 million women completely left the workforce, just walked away from the workforce, compared to 1.8 million men. Overall, the women's labor force participation rate has not been this low since 1988. Here are a few data points that I encourage you to ponder. Women make up 94% of the childcare sector, 94%, 89% of the home health care services sector, 84% of the nursing care sector, and 76% of the residential facility sector. Thanks to advocates like the Schuyler Center, and we'll hear from one of those advocates shortly, and the leadership of the Assembly and Senate, the New York State budget has started the work to fund programs that strengthen the care infrastructure and focus on women and families and our needs. This includes fully funding foundation aid to public school districts across the state. That was a battle. Adding 10,000 new subsidized childcare slots, which will allow more child daycare programs to expand from half day to full day. And for many of us who work full-time jobs, we know that half-day daycare just doesn't cut it. Funding to supplement wages for the childcare workforce. And lastly, the new fund for excluded workers, a $2.1 billion fund for undocumented immigrant New Yorkers who, because of their immigration status, have been excluded from any earlier relief programs. And at the federal level, we're also seeing some significant changes. The Biden-Harris administration established the White House Gender Policy Council. This is the first policy council focused on gender equity. In the American Jobs Plan, the president has proposed a $400 billion investment into senior care and long-term care. And just last week, Vice President Harris, and I like saying this, I'm going to repeat that. Vice President Harris announced that $39 billion in the American Rescue Plan will go to two funds. $24 billion for childcare providers to reopen or stay open and provide mental health supports for educators and children. And the second fund, $15 billion in more flexible funding for states to make childcare more affordable and increase compensation for early childcare and childhood workers. Right here in Albany, where I sit and where I serve the people in this community, a COVID-19 task force will be convened to look at how we equitably distribute funds throughout our city. And Mayor Kathy Sheehan's recovery plan will use federal funding to hire employees and to operate full summer youth employment program, along with recreation camps and clinics. And yet, despite all of these investments and initiatives, there is still so much work that needs to be done. So let's jump into our panel discussion and hear from some of the dynamic women leaders across the state who are getting it done. We are joined today by my dear soror, friend, and colleague, Angela Alozi, Executive Director of Youth Development at the Capital District YMCA. Nationwide, the Y is offering emergency child care at more than 1,000 sites for families of medical personnel, essential employees, and first responders. Additionally, Ys across the country became and remain food distribution sites. Our next panelist is Dee Dee Hill, Director of Policy at the Schuyler Center. The Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy is a leading statewide policy and analysis and advocacy organization, or is a leading wide state policy analysis and advocacy organization working to shape policies to improve health, welfare, and human services for all New Yorkers, especially our most disenfranchised New Yorkers. And finally, Assembly Member Latrice Walker, representing the 55th Assembly District in Brooklyn. BK, stand up. The Assembly member chairs the Election Law Committee and is a member of the Codes, Correction, Housing, and Judiciary Committees, as well as the Task Force on Women's Issues. And directly related to this conversation, she is the mother of a school-aged daughter. So with that, let's hear from our panelists. Angela, I'm going to direct the first comment and question to you. The mission of your organization is centered on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. And we know right now, young women of color are more likely to not be in school or working for pay because of unequal childcare responsibilities at home. What are you seeing among the communities you work with? And are their needs going to be addressed by this funding coming from the state and federal government?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Dr. Dorsey Appears. It's so good to see you and be with everyone this afternoon. And thank you so much for that question, because it's a critically important one. And certainly through my lens as working with young people across the Capital Region, but also convening with networks, not only just in this state, but beyond. You know, young women of color are experiencing what we call a forever pandemic, right? So the social and racial inequities, as well as this healthcare pandemic and the current climate that we are all, and conditions that we're living under, what we're seeing and seeking to quickly respond to are the drastic changes that young women of color are making in terms of their future choices and decisions. So what that looks like is young women of color from very early on, middle and high school, altering their participation in their virtual or hybrid classes to caretake their siblings, or even community, members of in their community, this sort of pooling of childcare resources by young adults as a community response to childcare that is not affordable or adequate, or they don't fit within the realm of emergency responders or emergency services, so that there is not adequate spaces for childcare operating under capacity levels and limits. We're also seeing a change in goals for seeking higher education or post-high school graduation plans. And with the evolution and lack of employment opportunities just all across the board, but how it impacts young people and their employment, less hours, lack of available options, and really understanding that their income that they may be bringing in from their part-time jobs really contributes to their household income, to a family's income. So we're looking at mass unemployment and, the consequences of that. So, I think a lot of the programs that we're running are really looking to seek to respond to how we can build support structures and really provide basic needs. And this is where you see mutual aid programs, community-based, grassroots level mutual aid programs really stepping up and filling in that gap. Because even if the social services are there, time lapse, time delays, response times with getting that actual need met in an effective time frame, the systematic delays are creating, daily crises. We're talking about food, we're talking about utility services, we're talking about internet access, we're talking about supplies, and then we're talking about all of the other basic living needs that young women are really, especially young women of color, they are having to make these very adult choices for themselves right now, but also for their family members and those in their most immediate community. So you see this banding together in mutual aid groups really helping to bridge that gap, but the systematic delay of state, federal dollars, investment and funding really creates a hardship. And so that we're seeing that life choices are being altered as we speak during this pandemic.
Thank you so much for that. And there were so many nuggets in there. That last point, life choices that will have lasting implications. You talked about the forever pandemic. And when we think about Black women and women of color in the United States, some feel that we've always lived in a pandemic. This just exacerbated and revealed for some what we have been saying for a very long time and screaming that the house is on fire and no one was listening. And so I thank you for those points. You alluded to a lack of pursuit of higher education. And so that's a good segue to the next question. Currently, undergraduate enrollment is down, especially at community colleges and for associate's degrees. Black, Hispanic, and Native American enrollment of first-year students for these institutions shows steep drops, and we're talking about roughly 29%. How do we turn those numbers around and support the next generation of women leaders with better policy on availability and affordability of higher education?
That is an excellent question. And so I think part of that is, and one of the areas of true concern is that now even two-year community colleges or 4-year community colleges, the enrollment and even interest level in pursuing that course of higher education is no longer desirable, right? So what we may be seeing a little bit of is a focus on trades, cosmetology, esthetician, some of the other trades, construction, things that have a more immediate impact and benefit. So I think, overall, lowering the cost and making higher education free and accessible to all is certainly a policy pursuit. But also, I think we've seen some models in other states as well as other nations where providing basic income so that, there isn't the choice between what we're asking young women of color to do is, and the system that is currently set up, it isn't built. It's an impossible choice that really flies in the face of and isn't designed for healthy human capacity, right? So we're saying, focus on basic needs, food, shelter, your basic necessities, and then focus on your academic achievement, enrolling in school, having time. And then we haven't even talked about mental and emotional health and well-being. We haven't even talked about that yet. So we have these three major outliers. And so part of what we really do need to look at is we talk a lot about what our workforce development gaps are. We're hearing so much about the lack of diversity and equity in corporations and businesses and nonprofits alike all throughout the state. And so there are so many industries right now that are ripe for true workforce development pipeline programs that really focus and center the needs of young women of color. And those programs are not impossible to design, but we have to be super responsive right now in creating opportunities, working with high school students. And that's something that we do at the YMCA. We work directly with hundreds of high school students throughout the state of New York. And our singular focus is really helping them to design a life post high school graduation or GED programs, entering trades, apprentice programs, but they're structured with the necessary basic support. So it's not just saying, here's a program, we want you to enter it. And, you go through this, 1 to 2 year, 6-month training program, but then there's nothing on the other side of that. And it really is a bridge between community and corporation-based partnerships that have long-term sustainable impact, that create jobs, that provide livable wages, and actually also create opportunities for career development. And we can do that right now. We have to do that right now.
Thank you for your passion and your lived experience and how it is helping to mold and mentor our young people in the Capital Region. There are so many who have the right idea in mind. Let's pass a policy, but just don't understand how it's bigger than the policy and the day-to-day work it takes to connect some of our young people who are dealing with so many barriers to academics, to employment. And so thank you for providing those remarks.
Might I just add one more thing, Dr. Spears? So, and the other piece too is that what we're seeing is a lot of conversation and dialogue with potential dollars to back programs, right? And so that's future state. Those dollars, instead of, the prolonged 1 to 3 year listening tours to figure it out, we know what the challenges are. We know what the problems are. We know what it will take to keep young people in our areas to live. And I mean, the whole ecosystem would work if we would just put those dollars into immediate action. Support scholarships, support, again, basic living and basic income programs. Those programs work when you don't have to worry about, taking extra shifts so that you can provide food for members of, and meals for, and toiletries for your household. And you can actually focus on your job and skill development. That creates a better neighborhood. It creates more opportunities for the future. So instead of, and this is the challenge employed to some of our corporations that are spending so much money just doing these listening sessions and these tours, just talking to individuals, what are the needs? We know what the needs are. Put those same dollars into creating real life, live programs that start tomorrow, summer youth employment programs. That's going to be a big issue. It is April. We have about a month to figure that out. Put those dollars where it matters most and most immediately.
Thank you. And thank you for that call to action for immediate action and less talking. So Dee Dee, welcome. And I want to loop you in on this conversation and let's hear more about some of the work that you're doing on the ground. And so research from the Scholar Center shows that childcare in New York is among the most expensive in the nation, costing an average of $15,000 per year for full day care. And I know that all too well. What is baked into the New York State budget that goes to removing that burden for families? That's the first question. And then the second part of that question is the funding in the America Rescue Plan going to make it easier for families to afford care?
Thank you. So first of all, thank you so much for having me, and this conversation is amazing. So let me start. I want to just plus one what Anzala said about the need for funds to go out immediately. So I just wanted to just name that, and I'm going to circle back to that in the childcare space. But and before I get to the investments that are in this year's state budget for childcare, which are actually extraordinary and exciting, I do just want to respond, sort of put things in context. We talk about the high cost of childcare in New York, which is extraordinary, and it's not. It's also an issue around the country, but I think it's really important to understand or underscore that it is expensive for good reasons, right? Little ones, our babies, they need lots of hands-on attention. They need high quality interactions. They need low child to teacher ratios. That is what they need to thrive. And so the state appropriately requires those things, and it's highly regulated, which generally is appropriate. So the problem that New York and the nation faces related to the high cost of childcare is not that the cost is high, but rather the funding mechanism is all wrong. Childcare needs to be treated and funded like the public good that it is. It's not a private service. It's not a service for women, right? It is a public good, and we need to start treating it that way. And I think another really important sort of point that we can't say enough is even though it's way too expensive for families, the cost of childcare right now is actually artificially low. And the way that we keep it lower than really the true cost of care is on the backs of the childcare workforce. And the childcare workforce, as was stated earlier, is almost entirely women. Very many are women of color. And many of our childcare workforce are paid wages that are near poverty. And this is not because childcare providers, the owners are mean-spirited. There is simply, they cannot ask parents to pay more. The funding mechanism doesn't work. So anyway, so with all of that, and you know, I will also say that we went in the childcare sector, childcare and families who rely upon childcare went into the pandemic, you know, in crisis. It was already in crisis long before the pandemic. The pandemic, you know, sort of nail in the coffin. The pandemic has really pushed the sector to the breaking point, has pushed families to their breaking point. But enough bad news. There is some really, really good news. The New York State budget has historic investments in childcare this year. And most of those funds, and I think all of the new funds, come from the American Rescue Plan Act. New York, all told, if we pulling from, there have been 3 different federal stimulus funds with childcare funds. New York has in its possession about $2.3 billion additional dollars for childcare. And to put that in perspective, in a typical year, New York spends about $832 million for childcare subsidies, which are the principal means of support for low-income working families. So the state has in its possession about 3 times, you know, in addition, 3 more times of funds to use. And this is an extraordinary opportunity. It comes not a moment too soon for the families and providers that need it. And I'll just say, and because I could go on, and I know we have a lot of other important things to get to, but just a couple of concrete ways that this will help families if we get the funds out quickly and effectively. Here are a few ways. First, the budget would have more families, tens of thousands of families will be newly eligible to receive childcare subsidies. And that's essentially monthly payments from the government that cover most, but not all of the cost of childcare. The budget increases eligibility to 200% at the federal poverty level around the state, where it used to vary or currently varies county to county. It also calls for the expansion of child care subsidies, makes it a requirement that families who are in what we call priority groups, it becomes mandatory. And with one caveat, and that is funds allowing. But here are some of the groups of families who could find themselves eligible for subsidies, which could be life-changing. Parents who are looking for work, parents who are in training programs for work, foster families, parents struggling with mental health issues. These are just some of the categories where we're going to see new eligibility. And really for these families, this could be a lifeline. And then two other areas I'll touch on. For those families who are receiving subsidies, they have to pay a parent share. Well, what this budget does is it lowers the amount that families have to pay. So it's going to make childcare even more affordable for those families. And finally, for the childcare sector, which it has been struggling for so long and right now is really on the verge of collapse, there is $1.2 billion set aside for grants, and these are supposed to come as upfront grants. They should be rolled out quickly, and they will be going directly to childcare providers that so desperately need them. So I'll pause there. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for those nuggets. And you started off with some comments that I hear you. Childcare is expensive for a reason. And oftentimes we talk about childcare and how much it costs, but the reality is when you have little ones, you know how great the job is, and it requires patience and expertise. And so we devalue what it means to care full time for our children. And then childcare is a public good. And I appreciate you dropping that nugget. Let's transition a bit to welcome our next panelist, Assemblymember Walker. Welcome. And I have a few follow-up questions for you. Shifting a bit, how do we get women into good paying, long-lasting jobs with benefits and stability that can be insulated from a repeat of this past year?
Well, I think, first of all, I'll say more women should run for office. The question, of course, will always be, do we consider this to be, a good paying job? Because you have like 5 or 6 full-time jobs all on top of one. And so I will also say that when we elect more women into office, we always remember, what our own personal experiences are, and we bring all of those experiences to the fore. And, so just listening to Dee Dee talk about childcare and how that's a predominantly women-based industry. I remember when I first got to Albany, when I ran for office, my daughter was 2 years old. And, it's like, how am I going to run the office and run back to Albany with the 2-year-old? And so childcare was just always something I thought about, and it was expensive, and rightfully so. It's deserving to be that way. And there was this childcare work group that I was like, I need to be on this work group. And part of the conversation was, well, you have to be a chair in order to be on the work group. And I'm like, well, make me a chair, right? let's just do what we have to do. And so I think it's important for us to be at the table, because of course, as you know, when we're not at the table, we're on the menu. And when we have this new generation of women who are all elected, I think we're probably the largest class of women that the New York State Legislature has ever seen. We have a woman who was at the fore of the New York State Senate. And so quite frankly, you know, a lot of the common sense issues, the pocketbook issues, become things that we do. And so one of the things that we just did yesterday was a domestic workers Bill of Rights to include paid family leave. And so part of the struggle that, you know, is not necessarily the fact that there are many barriers to us getting into a number of different industries. And then when we're there, we have to stay there. And there are a lot of things that prevent us from being able to do that. So my mom was a domestic worker when I grew up. And quite frankly, it was something that, you know, I used to be ashamed of until I looked around and realized that everything it was that everyone else was receiving, whose mom and dad may have been lawyers and doctors, you know, going to Brooklyn Tech, brought a certain, you know, type of educated academic class. And that I really just thought, you know, coming up from South Carolina, my mom being a domestic worker, she wasn't fitting the bill, but there was nothing that I needed that she didn't provide, right? But I also recognized those times when I had childhood asthma. And when I had to go to the hospital to go on those machines and my mom needed to stay home from work, she was not being paid for those days that she wasn't able to go to work. And so we're looking out for domestic workers all across the state to be able to say, if you need to stay home with your children and your family, do that. That's $2.4 billion in childcare aid. That, as we know, will help to keep that particular industry going and growing, quite frankly, because we need a lot more seats. Childcare is about, you know, opening up opportunities for people to be included and to become a member of the workforce in our state. And so those resources were incredibly fortunate for us. Then there's a lot of other people who are, you know, finding it hard to make ends meet with respect to paying rent or, you know, going through the circumstances of paying their mortgage. And how are we going to keep a foot and keep a roof over our children's heads, knowing that we have to make it our business to go back and forth to work. And so we did this as well in order to sort of take some of the burden off of our working women. Then there's also the $1.4 million that we put for career pathways in order to create more opportunities for women to be educated or have access to industries that were generally closed off to us. And then $4 million for Attain Labs. Attain Labs are all across the state. And if you're looking to sort of develop your skills, if you have this opportunity now to be home and you want to, you know, learn Excel or learn coding, it provides an opportunity to do that. Then we did $475,000 for wage subsidies. There's another $144,000 that we provided for the Wheels to Work program. So many places across the state, if you don't have access to a car, then you can't get to work. And so we made sure that we are providing that opportunity as well. And then the number one thing that I love the most about some of the work that we've done is the unemployment that was provided to parents who are forced to leave work in order to care for their children. And as you indicated, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I quickly became a teacher. And the patience that was required, you know, in order for me to just help her figure out how to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators was like, it was driving me insane. But it was an amazing opportunity because I always felt like having to leave her and go to Albany, she wasn't getting the type of nurturing from me, you know, that I wish I could have given her. But the pandemic opened up the opportunity for me to really just learn how to be a better mother. And so many women have this opportunity now to sort of reconnect with their children. I don't know, that first day it was like, you know, hi, I'm Latrice and I'm your mom, right? And so, but so many women were forced out of the workforce simply because they couldn't, you know, provide childcare. And this created an opportunity for folks to be able to say, you know what, if you got to stay home, you do what you have to do, and you will not have any retribution from the state. And who would say, well, if you quit your job, so you don't get access to unemployment. This opened up that as a pipeline. And then, of course, I'm going to do a shameless plug for an amazing group called Empower. And so Empower is an organization that we just began to fund in the New York State Assembly that creates an opportunity for women to be more involved in the sort of computer programming, networking opportunities that so many women have been cast out because, if you were anything like me, math and science was not my thing. Like I did great in ELA and in debate. But when it came to chemistry, et cetera, it just wasn't my thing. And now we want more young women to be comfortable in that space. And so we have a lot more work ahead of us. Our legislative session is beginning. The budget is behind us. I think that this has been probably the best budget that we've been a part of during my tenure as a member of the Assembly. And quite frankly, we started the year off thinking that it was going to be the worst. And so we're grateful to our partners at the federal level and really, are encouraging all of the women who are on here and who are running for office to continue to stay the course, because you are so needed in those halls of justice in order to make sure that we remember to keep the main thing, and that's our families.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And you said something, you said the best budget. Can you quickly share, what do you think, your heart of heart, makes this the best budget? What about the dynamics makes this the best budget?
Well, because we put funding into areas that we thought were going to be closed off. I remember when the dynamics came up and Speaker Hasty was assigning committee chairmanships. And one of the chairmanships that were up was social services. And I was like, oh my God, who would want to have to go to all these amazing social services programs to be like, I'm sorry, there's no money in the budget. And that was the grim future that we believed that we were going to be under, especially considering coming off of everything that we dealt with over the past 4 years in the federal government. And so we all worked hard in order to change the dynamics of what was happening in Washington. And then when the skies opened up, and then with this Recovery Act was passed, we were able to put not just the money back to restore the resources that we've already had, but to make it bigger, better, and bolder, and put years on top of years of funding. And so this is not just a one-shot deal, but hopefully it's something that we'll be able to continue along and make sure that these are legacy moments to make sure that we go not just from 4K across the state, but that we're also looking at a 3K plan as well. And so there's still a lot more that we need to do, but I am just so confident. And then the budget, they call it a budget dance for a reason, right? And so everything gets zeroed out in order for you to fight for restoration. And so you're fighting to get back, the little bit that you already had, to take you sort of off course for trying to get more resources to be able to be put back into it. And I think the dynamics of the battle for resources in the budget changed because we had access to so many more resources.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bigger, better, bolder. I'm going to put that on my computer screen, and you, through your words, I feel so much optimism. And although collectively we threw out a lot of figures during this panel dialogue today, these are real dollars that will be going into communities across the state. And that is just a beautiful thing. As you mentioned, many of us started the year just feeling as if coming from a place of deficit and depletion, and to be in a place to allocate resources to communities that really need the money. Amazing. Thank you so much for all the work that you continue to do on all of our behalf. And thank you to your daughter for allowing us to benefit from you as her mother because of the tireless work that you put in right up the block here in our capital. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
So we are, I'm looking at being mindful of time. I want to make sure that as our panelists, you have a few seconds to give us some final remarks. What do you want to leave our audience with? And I'm going to start with you, Dee Dee, to share again quickly some final remarks, and then we'll hear from you, Ansela, and we'll wrap up with our Assemblywoman.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Assemblywoman Walker said. I mean, this really was an extraordinary budget, and perhaps all the more extraordinary in that, you know, we sort of, the lead up, our hearts were, you know, in our shoes. I mean, it was looking just horrible, particularly for children and families, and really through the leadership of the Assembly and the Senate. Wow, you know, it really, and I think what gives me the most optimism is that the investments that were made in this budget were not just to sort of stabilize and recover, which is so critical, but they're the seeds for transformation in so many areas, in education, in childcare, I would say. So this excluded workers fund is extraordinary, and hopefully will be marks just the beginning of making sure that all New Yorkers, all families get the economic supports they need. So there's so much to celebrate, but I think my parting message would be none of it matters until it's implemented properly and implemented effectively, implemented boldly. So we all have to sort of be on the lookout. And then the other piece is sustainability, is making sure that, you know, we start the transformation and that it doesn't end, that we sustain it, because our kids, our families, they need support now, they need support in 2 years, and they need support long after the American Rescue Plan Act funds run out. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Ansela.
Again, thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this really, really important discussion today. You know, and I really appreciate, Assemblywoman, what you said about this being a real budget. And we are appreciative that it is a real budget with real dollars centered on real experiences and needs. And so there is a lot to be hopeful for around that. And sustainability is the key word. One of the central pieces that I will say is that in terms of working with young people, especially young people of color, especially young women of color, is that there's a lot of hope for advocacy and civic service as, you know, the future. I think this experience that we've all collectively been living in has incited even bigger fires for them to create the social change that they are demanding. It's not social change that they want to see. They are demanding and requiring it through all systems. So that's exciting to see. And we have to continue to look at these experiences and this funding through a holistic perspective. And so I think this budget does that, and this plan can do that even more so, from childcare to after school programs, but also workforce development programs specifically designed for the needs of women and girls.
Thank you. Thank you. And last word, Assemblywoman, and we'll then turn it over to Brett to close us out.
So this has been an amazing panel. Like, I learned a lot. I'm also inspired by all of the women who are here. They, you know, talk about this whole concept of Black girl magic. But what I learned is that there's nothing magical. There's no magic pixie dust that any of us have, that we work hard, we are committed, we are dedicated to our communities, to our state and respective legislative bodies, to our organizations, and to all of the people who we work so hard to either represent and serve. And so I'm inspired, and at least gives me more energy to continue to push forward. We have a few more months ahead of us in this legislative session. But I also want to, again, recognize how important it is for us to make sure that we have women who are at the table with respect to legislative office all across the board. And one of the things that have been shown here is not just in legislative office, but also in these organizations, to be able to have women who are at the helm, who can communicate our issues and who can speak on our behalf, and that we don't have to try to convince them, why childcare is important, because they are living and breathing examples of everything it is that we fight for. And so again, it's an honor and a privilege to serve. I look forward to continuing in this effort. There is still a lot more, other opportunities I think that we should converse about. But of course, thinking about more women being involved in so many different industries. This is a recalibration moment. And so I want to also support another sister who I know she lost her job in the tech world and decided that she was going to go and start her own business. And so we want to promote more entrepreneurship for women. If you are sitting on this call and you had some great idea in your heart that you always wanted to do, now is the time to put yourself out there, get on your social media platforms, and who knows, that could be the next multi-billion dollar industry. And I'm sure it's something that we can all get behind. Of course, we need to be more supportive of women-owned businesses. We know that women will hire women in more instances than not. And then whenever it is that we do that, we are also creating a space and an atmosphere for other women to be inspired. I was inspired to run for office. I came through a great pipeline. Of course, our Attorney General, Letitia James, who served as my campaign manager when I ran for district leader. And now look at where she is. And I'm grateful to be here. I was counsel to Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. She supported me in running for office. And then my chief of staff, who was also my best friend growing up, Alika Ampry Samuel, and we were able to support her in order to be the council member and maybe, who knows, even first female speaker of the New York City Council. Shameless plug, but why not? And I think that there's so many other women who are coming behind us, and of course our little girls who are watching us as we're serving and who will look at us not as exceptions but as examples. And so thank you so much for all of the work that you guys do. Thank you so much for all of the support that you've given me, and I look forward to continuing and growing in this field with you.
Thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you to all of our panelists. Brett, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Appliers, and thank you, Dr. Appliers. Again, I can't say it enough. You masterfully navigated us through a really huge, big, complex, but extremely vital and important topic. And I appreciate the time that you've given us. And thank you, Assemblymember Walker and Dee Dee from the Schuyler Center and Angela from the Capital District YMCA. A force of habit, I kept always writing it as YWCA. It just comes with the job. It comes with the job, but I acknowledge there's another half out there at the YMCA. And thank you to Kaylee Scott, our digital director behind the scenes, who was dropping into the chat all of the links for the attendees to follow up with, starting from NPower all the way through. We'll send out a follow-up email rounding up all of the information that was shared so that you, the attendees, can continue to do your own research, inform your own advocacy, and support the work that the Assembly member Dee Dee and Angela are doing on behalf of the 10 million women and girls across New York State. And perhaps find out how you can send Dr. Appliers back to her job as Chief Auditor of Albany. A working mom and an elected mom is an important woman to have when we're drawing up budgets and figuring out where to spend the money. It's important to have her voice in Albany. And we will all perhaps meet again, because as we all know, and as was clear, this is a new day in Albany and a new day for advocates and for people who have been working on the issue of women girls and the care infrastructure. And there's only potential for us to continue to fully fund these programs and to get these communities the resources they need to be on the path to live their healthiest, most full lives. And as Martha Robertson said in the chat, making sure that the money stays after this moment of emergency that we're in is going to be crucial. And we want to do our role at the Eleanor's Legacy Action Fund to continue providing you, the attendees, opportunities to connect directly and find out how you can join the community of electing women who are at the decision-making tables, drawing up the budgets and drawing up the policy to support the women and girls across New York State. I wish you all a happy, healthy Earth Day, and stay tuned. We'll continue to keep you informed of the roundtables that we have coming up as we plan them. And be well. Please get your vaccine. I look forward to the day when we can all meet in person and have these conversations and support each other and lift each other up. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who made this day happen. I appreciate you.